The crystalline halls of the Galactic Council station reflected light from 1,000 different angles, creating patterns that would drive most humans dizzy. Ambassador Elena Volkov had learned to ignore them years ago. She walked with measured steps toward the central chamber, her dark blue uniform pressed and perfect, her expression carefully neutral. Behind her, 2 human aides followed in silence, carrying data tablets and diplomatic files. The emergency session had been called 3 hours ago. Elena knew what it would be about. The same thing every emergency session was about these days. The war. She entered the vast circular chamber and took her position at humanity's designated spot. It was near the back in the outer ring where the newest and least important species sat. The Galactic Council had 847 member species. Humanity ranked 846th in influence. Only the Peltharians, a species of floating jellyfish creatures who had just achieved faster-than-light travel last year, ranked lower. The chamber filled quickly. Tall, proud Vicorians with their crystalline exoskeletons, the floating consciousness of the ephemerites contained in their glowing spheres, 3-headed Dronari diplomats arguing with themselves, and in the prime positions, close to the central podium, sat the 2 species currently tearing the galaxy apart. On the left, the Sovereign Dominion. Reptilian creatures standing over 8 feet tall, covered in scales that ranged from deep green to black. Their ambassador, Kreshtak, sat with his massive clawed hands folded, his vertical pupils scanning the room with cold calculation. The Dominion controlled 4,000 star systems and commanded a military force that had conquered half of them by force. On the right, the Confluence Collective. They had no single form. The collective was a hive mind that could inhabit multiple body types, but today they appeared as a group of insectoid creatures, with too many legs and multifaceted eyes that reflected everything. Their consciousness, shared among millions of bodies across hundreds of worlds, spoke through all of them at once in an unsettling chorus. The war between them had lasted 17 years. Entire species had been wiped out. Hundreds of worlds burned. The death count had stopped being meaningful after the first billion. The council session began with the usual formalities. The High Arbiter, a Vicorian named Crystalline that Thinks, called the chamber to order. Its voice resonated through translation devices worn by every delegate. "We gather in darkness once more," it said, its crystalline body chiming with each word. "The war continues. Both parties have requested this session to demand action from neutral parties." Elena felt her jaw tighten. She knew what was coming. Kreshtak rose first, his massive form dominating the central floor. "The Sovereign Dominion has been patient with those who call themselves neutral. But neutrality is a myth. To stand aside while we fight for civilization itself is to support our enemies. We demand that all council members choose a side, particularly humanity." He turned his gaze directly to Elena. Even across the vast chamber, she felt the weight of it. "The humans have provided aid to Confluence refugees. They have sheltered those who flee from our justice. They have shared resources with our enemies. This is not neutrality. This is support for those who would see the Dominion fall. We demand humanity cease this immediately or face consequences." The Confluence responded next, their chorus of voices speaking as one. "The Dominion speaks of justice while committing genocide. We ask only for survival." "Humanity has shown compassion, yes." "Is compassion now a crime? We request formally that humanity join our cause. Together we could end this war in months rather than decades." Elena had heard variations of this speech dozens of times. Both sides wanted humanity's support, not because humanity had a powerful military or controlled valuable resources. No, they wanted humanity for symbolic reasons. Humanity was one of the few species that both sides still saw as truly neutral. If humans chose a side, it might convince other fence-sitters to follow. What neither side understood was that humanity had no intention of choosing. The High Arbiter turned to Elena. "Ambassador Volkov, does humanity wish to respond?" Elena stood, her small human frame dwarfed by nearly every other species in the room. She had done this so many times she no longer felt nervous. She walked to her species' speaking platform, a small podium that elevated her slightly so the chamber could see her. "The Terran Commonwealth maintains its position of neutrality," she said clearly. "We will continue to provide humanitarian aid to any species in need, regardless of their affiliation. We will not take sides in this conflict. We urge both parties to return to peace negotiations." Laughter erupted from the Dominion section. Actual laughter. Kreshtak's deep rumbling chuckle echoed through the chamber. Peace negotiations, he repeated as if the words were a joke. The humans speak of peace. Tell me, Ambassador, how many wars did your species fight before you even left your own world? How many millions did you kill in conflicts over resources, territory, ideology? And now you lecture us about peace? Elena's expression didn't change. We learned from our mistakes. We hoped the galaxy might do the same. More laughter, not just from the Dominion now, but from other species too. The Dronari delegates chittered among themselves. A Vakorian made a sound like breaking glass, which Elena's translator rendered as condescending amusement. The humans are children, said Ambassador Crystalline that thinks, though not unkindly. They have been part of this council for only 50 years. They do not understand the complexities of galactic politics. Their military consists of perhaps 300 warships. Their technology is borrowed and derivative. Their colonies number fewer than 20 worlds. They mean well, but they are simply too small to matter in affairs such as these. Elena returned to her seat. She had expected nothing less. This was how it always went. Humanity spoke. The galaxy dismissed them. The war continued. The session dragged on for hours. Other species made speeches. Alliances were reaffirmed. Threats were made subtly and not so subtly. The Dominion demanded sanctions against the Collective. The Collective pleaded for intervention against Dominion war crimes. The neutral species offered thoughts and prayers and little else. Elena sat quietly, reviewing data on her tablet. Casualty reports from the last month. Trade disruptions. Refugee movements. The war was spreading, slowly but inevitably, consuming more and more of the galaxy. How long before humanity's neutrality became impossible to maintain? She thought about Earth, green and blue and beautiful, spinning peacefully in its little corner of space. She thought about the colonies, New Johannesburg, Nova Scotia, New Mumbai, Armstrong Base on Luna. Humanity had spread carefully, slowly, always aware that they were the newcomers in a galaxy full of ancient civilizations. 50 years ago, when human ships first achieved faster-than-light travel and encountered the Galactic Council, humanity had been terrified and awed in equal measure. Species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years, technology that seemed like magic, civilizations that spanned hundreds of worlds. Humanity had approached it all with caution and humility. They had joined the council as junior members. They had learned languages and customs. They had traded carefully and built relationships slowly. They had been polite, respectful, and patient, and in return, they had been dismissed as primitives. As children, as a species so far beneath notice that they barely mattered, Elena had lived with that for her entire career. 20 years as a diplomat, rising through the ranks until she became humanity's primary ambassador to the Council. 20 years of being talked down to, ignored, and condescended to by species who saw humans as barely civilized. She had learned to smile through it, to be patient, to play the long game. The session was finally ending when the alarm sounded. It wasn't a normal alarm. This was the emergency broadcast system, used only for immediate threats. Every delegate's translation device activated simultaneously, receiving the same message. A recorded voice, flat and emotionless, delivered the news. Attention Galactic Council. Confirmed attack on human colony world New Johannesburg. Dominion fleet identification confirmed. Planetary bombardment in progress. Estimated casualties 2.3 million and rising. Message ends. The chamber fell silent. Elena felt her blood turn to ice. 2.3 million. New Johannesburg had a population of 3 million. That meant Kreshtak stood. A regrettable incident. New Johannesburg was established in what the Dominion considers a strategic zone. We warned humanity that establishing colonies in contested space carried risks. They chose not to listen. The Dominion will not apologize for protecting its strategic interests. Elena stared at him. The words didn't make sense at first. Her mind couldn't process them. 2.3 million people. Dead. And he called it regrettable. Around the chamber, other species began speaking at once. Some expressed shock, some called for investigations. The collective condemned it as an atrocity, but many species said nothing. They looked uncomfortable, yes, disturbed certainly, but they did nothing because this was how things worked in the galaxy. The big species did what they wanted. The small species endured it, and everyone pretended there were rules. Elena stood slowly. Her hands were shaking. She gripped the edge of her podium to steady them. I request an immediate formal session, she said quietly. Tomorrow. To address this attack, the High Arby. Elena didn't sleep that night. She sat at her desk in the human embassy section of the council station, writing and rewriting her speech. The words had to be perfect. Everything had to be exactly right. Around her, the embassy was chaos. Staff rushed through corridors. Communication channels were overloaded with messages from Earth, from the colonies, from human ships across known space. Everyone wanted to know what came next. Everyone wanted answers she couldn't give yet. Her second-in-command, Ambassador Chen, entered without knocking. He was a short man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been awake as long as she had. Earth responded to your Protocol Omega request, he said quietly, handing her a data tablet. Elena read it once, then again. Her hands were steady now. She had moved past shock into something colder, something more focused. They approved it, she said, all of it. Full authorization. The Prime Minister addressed the General Assembly 2 hours ago. The vote was unanimous. Chen sat down across from her. Elena, are you sure about this? Once you say the words, we can't take them back. They killed 2.3 million civilians, David. They called it regrettable. What would you have me do? Make another speech about peace? Ask for sanctions that will never come? File a formal complaint? I know. I just want to make sure you've thought about what comes after. Elena looked at her old friend. They had been diplomats together for nearly 2 decades. They had both believed in the dream of joining the galactic community, of humanity finding its place among the stars through peaceful cooperation. I've thought about nothing else, she said. This is the only way. The formal council session began exactly on time. The chamber was even more crowded than the day before. Word had spread that humanity would make some kind of statement. Species that usually skipped routine sessions had sent representatives. Everyone wanted to see what the humans would do. Elena noticed that extra security was present. Armed guards from a dozen species lined the walls. That was unusual for a formal session. Someone expected trouble. The High Arbiter called the session to order. The chamber quieted. We are gathered to address the incident at the human colony of New Johannesburg, Crystalline That Thinks announced. Ambassador Volkov requested this session. Ambassador, you have the floor. But before Elena could stand, Kreshtak rose. A point of order, the massive Dominion ambassador said. Before we waste time on speeches, let me make the Dominion's position clear. New Johannesburg was established in space we claim as part of our defensive perimeter. We have warned humanity repeatedly about expanding into contested zones. They ignored those warnings. What happened was unfortunate, but it was a direct result of human carelessness. Careless? Elena found herself standing, her voice cutting across the chamber. You call it careless? You bombarded a civilian population center. There were no military installations on New Johannesburg. No weapons, no ships. Just families, children, schools and farms and homes. Kreshtak's scales rippled in what might have been a shrug. In war, such distinctions become blurred. If humanity wishes to avoid future incidents, they should reconsider their colonial expansion policy, perhaps choose locations less strategically sensitive. Around the chamber, other species began to speak. The Drenari suggested an investigation. The Ephemerites called for a commission to study the incident. A minor species from the Outer Rim proposed sanctions, but their voice was lost in the general debate. Elena watched it all with growing clarity. They were going to do nothing. Some species would condemn the attack. Some would express sympathy. Some would use it as leverage for their own political games. But at the end of this session, nothing would change. The Dominion would face no consequences. Humanity would receive no justice, and the next time it might be another human colony, or maybe Earth itself. She turned to Chen, who stood beside her at the human delegation area. He nodded once. Behind them, the other 12 human representatives at the station stood as one. They had discussed this. They had all agreed. Elena raised her hand, requesting to speak. The High Arbiter, looking relieved to restore order, recognized her. Ambassador Volkov, please proceed. Elena walked to the central podium, the spot where major announcements were made. It was reserved for important species. Humanity had never used it before. A few delegates murmured in surprise. She stood there, small and human, surrounded by creatures that saw her as a child playing at diplomacy. She gripped the edges of the podium and looked out at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. 50 years ago, she began, her voice steady and clear, humanity encountered your ships for the first time. We had just developed faster-than-light travel. We were new to the stars, and we were terrified. The chamber had gone quiet. Everyone was listening now. We were terrified because we didn't know if you would see us as people or as resources. We didn't know if you would welcome us or destroy us. We knew we were weak. We knew we were vulnerable, so we approached you carefully, respectfully. We asked to join your council. We learned your laws. We accepted your judgments. We worked hard to prove we could be good members of this community. She paused, letting that sink in. And for 50 years we have been patient. We have endured being called primitives. We have accepted being seated in the back of this chamber, treated as the least among you. We have watched you dismiss our ideas and ignore our concerns, and we have stayed quiet, because we believed that eventually you would see us as equals. That patience would be rewarded. Kreshtak made a sound that might have been boredom. Is there a point to this history lesson? Elena's eyes locked onto his. The point is that yesterday you crossed a line. You murdered 2.3 million human civilians. You destroyed an entire world. And when we came here seeking justice, you called it regrettable. You blamed us for building homes in the wrong place. I stated facts, Kreshtak said. If you dislike facts, you stated your truth, Elena interrupted. Now let me state mine. For 50 years, humanity has been watching you. All of you. We've watched how you conduct war, how you treat smaller species, how you respond to atrocities. And we've learned something important. She turned slowly, addressing the entire chamber now. We learned that this council is not a true government. It's a theater. A place where the powerful do whatever they want and the weak pretend there are rules. We learned that in this galaxy, might makes right. We learned that the only species that matter are the ones that can enforce their will. Careful, Ambassador, the High Arbiter warned. You speak of things you do not understand. I understand perfectly, Elena said. I understand that this council will not help us. That none of you will stand against the Dominion. That we are on our own. Just like every other small species that has been conquered or destroyed while you all watched and did nothing. She took a deep breath. This was it. The moment everything changed. So let me tell you what humanity has decided. We're done being patient. We're done being dismissed. We're done waiting for you to protect us because we know now that you won't. You call us children? Then watch what these children can do. Her voice rose, filling the chamber with a force that surprised even her. Effective immediately, the Terran Commonwealth is entering this war. We are declaring our formal opposition to the sovereign Dominion. We will fight them. We will stop them. And we will protect every species they threaten, because apparently no one else will. The chamber erupted. Delegates from 100 species began shouting at once. The security guards moved forward, hands on weapons. The High Arbiter's voice boomed through translation devices, calling for order. Through it all, Kreshtak simply laughed. He stood, his massive form towering over everything. You cannot be serious. Your entire fleet consists of 300 ships. The Dominion commands 30,000. You control 18 colony worlds. We control 4,000 systems. Your military has never fought a major war. Ours has conquered half the galaxy. This isn't bravery, Ambassador. It's suicide, Elena smiled. It was not a nice smile. 300 ships. That's what you think we have. You've never asked what we've been building for 50 years. You've never questioned why humanity has been so quiet. You've never wondered why we established colonies in places you considered strategic. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to something cold and sharp. You thought we were primitives stumbling around the galaxy. You thought we were harmless. You were wrong. We've been preparing for this since the day we first met you. We hoped we'd never need it. We prayed that the galaxy would be the peaceful place we wanted it to be. But we prepared anyway because we're human, and we've learned to hope for the best while preparing for the worst. Kreshtak's laughter had stopped. His vertical pupils focused on her with new attention. You're bluffing. Am I? You're about to find out. Elena turned to the entire council. You've all dismissed us, ignored us, treated us like we didn't matter. Now you're going to learn what happens when you push humanity too far. We offered you peace. We offered you cooperation. You responded with murder. So now you get war. She stepped back from the podium. Behind her, the 14 human representatives stood in perfect unity. Not one of them showed fear. Not one of them looked away. This session is over, Elena said. We're done talking. Ambassador Kreshtok, tell your Dominion to prepare itself, because humanity is coming, and we will not stop. The Dominion High Command didn't take the human declaration seriously, not at first. In the war room of the Sovereign Dominion's capital ship, the Unyielding Fang, Fleet Admiral Corthan reviewed the intelligence reports with his senior officers. The massive reptilian commander had been fighting wars for longer than most species had been spacefaring. He had conquered 40 systems personally. He had destroyed fleets that outnumbered humanity's entire known military. 300 ships, he said, his voice a low rumble. The humans claim they will fight us with 300 ships. This isn't a threat. It's a tantrum. His tactical officer, a younger Dominion warrior named Shek, tilted his head. Sir, there are some unusual readings from human space. Our long-range sensors are detecting activity around their core systems. They're mobilizing their pathetic fleet. Let them. It will make destroying them easier if they gather in one place. Corthan brought up a star map. Here is what we'll do. The humans want war. We'll give them war. We'll strike at Earth itself. We'll destroy their homeworld, scatter their species, and make an example that will remind every minor species why they don't challenge the Dominion. Around the table, officers gestured their agreement. This would be easy. Quick, a surgical strike to remove an annoyance. Assemble the 15th Fleet, Corthan ordered. 5,000 ships. More than enough to overwhelm Earth's defenses and destroy their orbital infrastructure. We move in 3 cycles. The fleet assembled exactly on schedule. 5,000 Dominion warships, ranging from massive dreadnoughts the size of small moons to fast attack cruisers bristling with weapons. It was overwhelming force, far more than necessary to destroy a single planet's defenses. They jumped to faster-than-light speeds, heading directly for humanity's home system. Admiral Corthan expected token resistance. Maybe humanity's entire fleet would be waiting to defend Earth. Maybe they'd manage to destroy a few dozen Dominion ships before being wiped out. It would be a brief battle, barely worth recording in the histories. What he got instead changed everything. The Dominion fleet dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Sol system. Sensors immediately began scanning for targets. Earth was there, blue and green and vulnerable, deeper in the system. Between the Dominion fleet and Earth, sensor readings showed approximately 300 human ships in defensive formation. Corthan almost felt disappointed. Is that all? They didn't even evacuate. They're going to watch their homeworld burn. Then his tactical officer made a sound Corthan had never heard before, a sound of pure confusion mixed with fear. Sir, sensors are detecting additional signatures. More human ships? How many? Another 100? No, sir, thousands. They're everywhere. Corthan stared at the tactical display. It didn't make sense. The sensors showed human ships emerging from what looked like empty space. Ships that had been invisible, hidden using stealth technology that shouldn't exist. They came from the asteroid belt, from behind moons, from positions above and below the plane of the system. 12,000 ships, all of them powering weapons, all of them targeting the Dominion fleet. Impossible, Corthan whispered. Where did the human fleet attacked? They didn't bother with warnings or demands for surrender. They just opened fire with everything they had. And their weapons were unlike anything the Dominion had encountered. Human missiles moved at insane speeds, weaving and dodging in patterns that seemed random, but somehow always found their targets. Railguns fired projectiles with such velocity that they punched through shields the Dominion thought were impenetrable. Energy weapons cut through armor like it was paper. But worse than the weapons was the way humans fought. The Dominion used traditional military tactics. Formations that had proven effective for thousands of years, ships supporting each other in organized battle groups. Predictable, reliable, and overwhelming through sheer force. Humans fought like they were insane. Small groups of human ships would break formation, dive straight into Dominion battle lines, and unleash devastating close-range attacks before jumping away. They used asteroids as cover, hiding behind rocks and ambushing Dominion ships. They sacrificed damaged ships by ramming them into high-value targets. They set traps using fake distress signals. They hacked into Dominion communication channels and sent false orders. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't honorable. It was brutal, creative, and terrifyingly effective. Corthan tried to adapt. He reorganized his formations. He sent orders to his fleet to tighten up, to watch for ambushes, to verify all communications. But humans seemed to predict everything. Every adjustment he made, they countered. Every strategy he tried, they had already prepared for. Later, historians would study this battle and realize what had happened. Humanity had spent 50 years studying every species in the galaxy. They had recorded every battle, analyzed every tactic, learned from every war. They knew exactly how the Dominion fought because they had watched the Dominion fight for half a century. The Dominion, meanwhile, had never bothered to study humanity. Why would they? Humans were primitives, beneath notice. That mistake cost them everything. 3 hours into the battle, the Dominion fleet was in chaos. Ships were being destroyed faster than they could retreat. The humans had lost ships too, maybe 1,000, but they were winning. Actually winning. Corthan, his ship damaged and listing, gave the order to retreat. Of the 5,000 ships he had brought to Sol, only 200 managed to jump away to FTL. The rest were destroyed or captured. It was the worst defeat in Dominion history. While the space battle raged, another story unfolded on the planet Thraxis Prime, a world the Dominion had occupied for 3 years. Thraxis Prime had been conquered early in the war, its native population imprisoned in labor camps while Dominion forces used the planet as a strategic base. Captain James Joe had never expected to be a soldier. He had been a cargo pilot before the war, hauling supplies between Earth and the colonies. Now he was leading a company of Marines in the first ground assault of humanity's war. His mission was simple: rescue the prisoners in Camp 7. Intelligence said there were about 5,000 prisoners there, mostly Thraxis natives, but also some humans captured during the attack on New Johannesburg. His company of 200 Marines dropped from orbit in stealth pods. They landed 10 kilometers from the camp and moved through the alien jungle in silence. James had trained for this. All humans had basic military training now, something they'd quietly implemented 30 years ago. But training was different from reality. The weight of the rifle in his hands felt too real. The sounds of the jungle were too loud. Every shadow might be an enemy. They reached the camp at dawn. It was surrounded by walls and guard towers. About 300 Dominion soldiers garrisoned it. James used hand signals to position his troops. They moved like they'd done this 100 times, even though this was most of their first real combat. Humans had studied warfare. They knew what worked. They just hadn't had a chance to prove it until now. The attack began with the guard towers. Silent shots from human snipers took out the sentries. Then breaching charges blew holes in the walls. Marines poured through, moving fast and coordinated. The Dominion soldiers fought back, but they were used to fighting the confluence, whose tactics were based on overwhelming numbers and hive mind coordination. They had never fought anything like humans. Humans didn't fight like a hive mind. Every Marine could make independent decisions. They adapted in real time, covering each other, using terrain, and making split-second calls that threw the Dominion defenders into confusion. James's squad cleared a barracks building. He moved through corridors, his rifle up, his heart pounding. A Dominion soldier appeared around a corner. James fired 3 times. The soldier went down. James kept moving. No time to think. No time to process. Just training and instinct. 15 minutes after the attack began, the camp was secured. Some Dominion soldiers surrendered. Others fought to the death. James's company had lost 12 Marines. It hurt, losing people, but the mission was a success. They found the prisoners in underground cells. Thousands of them in terrible condition. Starved, beaten, some barely alive. James helped a human woman out of a cell. She was so thin he could carry her easily. "You're safe now," he told her. "We're getting you out of here." She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. "You came," she whispered. "We didn't think anyone would come, and we came," James said. "And we're just getting started." Back on the council station, the galaxy was reeling from the news. The battle at Sol had been monitored by dozens of species. Everyone had seen it. The Dominion, one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, had been destroyed by a species everyone thought was weak. Elena stood in the council chamber again, but this time she wasn't asking for anything. She was there to make a statement. "The Terran Commonwealth has begun military operations against the Sovereign Dominion," she announced. "We will continue these operations until the Dominion ceases all aggressive actions, withdraws from occupied territories, and agrees to peace terms. We invite other species to join us. We will protect any world that asks for our help, and we will not stop until this war is over." Kreshtekwa. 3 months after the Battle of Sol, Elena stood in her quarters on the council station and stared at the list of names scrolling across her screen. 800,000 of them. Every human who had died in the war so far. Soldiers, yes, but also civilians caught in attacks, crew members on destroyed ships, Marines who didn't make it back from ground assaults. 800,000 people who had been alive when she declared war. 800,000 people who died because of words she spoke. She knew logically that the Dominion killed them, not her. She knew that doing nothing would have led to more deaths eventually. She knew all the rational arguments. But late at night, alone in her quarters, the names haunted her. A knock at her door pulled her from dark thoughts. Chen entered without waiting for permission. He had that look on his face, the one that meant more bad news. "Another victory," he said, his voice flat. "We liberated the Kestros system. 4 planets freed, 1,200 Dominion ships destroyed. And our losses? 300 ships, 20,000 personnel." Elena closed her eyes. Victory. 20,000 more names for her list. "The council wants to meet with you," Chen continued. 7 species have formally requested to join our coalition. The Confluence is asking for closer coordination. And the Dominion has sent a message. They want to talk about what? Surrender terms, maybe. Or maybe they're buying time. Intelligence isn't sure. Elena stood, straightening her uniform. "Set up the meeting with the Dominion representative. But keep our fleets on alert. This could be a trap." The war had changed the galaxy in ways Elena hadn't expected. Humanity had liberated 40 occupied worlds in 3 months. The Dominion, which had seemed unstoppable, was actually being pushed back. Their mighty fleets were being destroyed. Their occupied territories were rising in rebellion. But victory came at a terrible cost. In the medical bay of a human carrier ship floating in orbit above New Carthage, James Joe sat beside a hospital bed. His friend and squadmate, Private Marcus Webb, lay there with bandages covering half his body. A Dominion plasma weapon had caught him during the assault on a military base. "How bad is it?" Marcus asked, his voice weak. James forced a smile. "You'll be fine. The docs say you'll be back on duty in a month." "You're a terrible liar, Captain." James's smile faded. The truth was that Marcus would probably never serve again. The burns were too severe. He'd be medically discharged, sent back to Earth, and would spend the rest of his life with scars and pain. "I'm sorry," James said quietly. "Not your fault. I volunteered." "We all did." Marcus coughed, wincing at the pain. "Did we at least win?" "Yeah, we took the base. Freed about 3,000 prisoners. Then it was worth it." Marcus closed his eyes. "Just wish it didn't hurt so much." James stayed until Marcus fell asleep, then walked through the ship's corridors. Everywhere he looked, he saw wounded soldiers. Young men and women who had been civilians a few months ago. Teachers and engineers and artists who had put on uniforms because humanity needed them. He passed a memorial wall. Photos of crew members who hadn't made it. There were so many faces. Too many. In the ship's observation deck, James found Lieutenant Sarah Chen, no relation to the ambassador. She stood at the window looking at the planet below. "You okay?" James asked. "I keep thinking about them," Sarah said. "The Dominion soldiers, the ones we killed. I know they were the enemy. I know they would have killed us. But they were people too, weren't they? They had families, lives, and we ended them." James didn't have a good answer for that. He'd killed Dominion soldiers. Dozens of them. Maybe more. He'd stopped counting. In the moment, it was survival. Kill or be killed. But afterward, in the quiet times, he wondered about the same things. "War doesn't give us good choices," he finally said. "Just bad ones and worse ones. We're trying to pick the bad ones. Doesn't make it easier. No, it doesn't." Back on the council station, the meeting with the Dominion representative took place in a secure chamber. Elena sat on one side of a long table. Across from her was Ambassador Vekris, a Dominion diplomat she'd never met before. Kreshtak had apparently been removed from his position after the disaster at Sol. Vekris was smaller than most Dominion, his scales a lighter green. He looked tired. "Ambassador Volkov," he began, "I come with a message from the Dominion High Command. They wish to discuss terms. Terms for what? Surrender? Terms for a ceasefire. A negotiated peace. This war has cost both sides greatly. Perhaps it's time to find a diplomatic solution." Elena studied him. 3 months ago, your people killed 2.3 million civilians on New Johannesburg. Your ambassador called it regrettable. Now you want peace? Mistakes were made. Actions were taken in anger. But continuing this conflict serves no one. Tell me, Elena leaned forward. How many species has the Dominion conquered? How many worlds have you occupied? How many billions have died in your wars of expansion? Vecris didn't answer. You don't want peace, Elena said. You want time to rebuild your fleets, time to develop weapons that can counter ours, time to find our weaknesses. Then you'll attack again. You cannot win, Vecris said, his voice hardening. You've had success, yes. You've surprised us, but the Dominion controls 4,000 systems. You control 18. Our resources are vast. Our military can be rebuilt. You're winning battles, but you cannot win the war. Eventually you'll run out of ships, out of soldiers, out of will, and then we'll destroy you. Elena felt cold rage building in her chest. Is that a threat? It's reality. Make peace now while you can. Accept a negotiated settlement, or continue fighting and face extinction. Elena stood. Here's my reality. We didn't want this war. We wanted to live peacefully. But you made that impossible. So now we're going to finish what you started. We're going to free every world you've occupied. We're going to destroy every fleet you send against us. And we're going to keep fighting until you're no longer a threat to anyone. She walked to the door, then paused. Tell your high command they have one chance to avoid total defeat. Surrender unconditionally. Withdraw from all occupied territories. Stand trial for war crimes. That's the only peace we're offering. You're making a mistake, Vecris said. We've made plenty of mistakes. This isn't one of them. The war continued. Humanity pushed deeper into Dominion space. More worlds were liberated. More battles were fought. And more people died. On Earth, the mood was complicated. People were proud of what humanity was accomplishing. They were grateful for the soldiers fighting to protect them. But they were also tired. Every family knew someone who had died. Every city held funerals. Every day brought news of casualties. Prime Minister Okonkwo addressed the General Assembly on the one-year anniversary of New Johannesburg's destruction. We have fought for 3 months, she said. We have lost 800,000 of our people. We have shed blood on 100 worlds. And I know many of you are asking, is it worth it? She paused, looking at the assembled representatives. I can't answer that for you. Every person must decide for themselves if this cause is worth the price. But I can tell you why we fight. We fight because 2.3 million people were murdered, and no one else would seek justice for them. We fight because species across the galaxy live in fear, and someone needs to stand up to their oppressors. We fight because we believe in a galaxy where might doesn't make right, where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. We fight because if we don't, humanity will never be safe, and neither will anyone else. The Assembly voted to continue the war. The vote was close, but it passed. Then the Dominion crossed another line. The agricultural world of New Horizon had been settled by humans 15 years ago. It was far from any battle zone. It had no military value. 3 million people lived there, farming and building a peaceful life. The Dominion deployed a biological weapon, a virus designed to target human DNA specifically. It spread through the population in days. By the time help arrived, 40 million people were dead. Every single human on New Horizon. When Elena received the news, she felt something inside her break. 40 million people gone, not in battle, not fighting, just murdered because they were human. Earth erupted in rage. People took to the streets demanding revenge. Military recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers. The call went out. Destroy the Dominion. Completely. Leave nothing standing. Elena found herself facing the hardest decision of her life. She called an emergency meeting of human leadership. Prime Minister Okonkwo, Fleet Admiral Jackson, and the heads of every major military and civilian organization. They met in a secure facility on Luna. We have the capability, Admiral Jackson said grimly. We can deploy planet-killing weapons. We can strike at the Dominion homeworld. Billions of them dead in hours. Eye for an eye. It would end the war, a general argued. They'd surrender immediately if we destroyed their home. And then what? Elena asked. We become the monsters we're fighting? We commit genocide to stop genocide. They did it first. That's not a reason. That's an excuse. Elena looked at each person in the room. I understand the rage. I feel it too. But if we do this, we lose. Not the war. Ourselves. We lose what makes us human. We lose our right to claim we're better than them. Then what do we do? Okonkwo asked. The people want revenge. They want blood. How do we tell them no? Elena was silent for a long moment. Then she said, we tell them the truth. That revenge won't bring back to the meeting was arranged on a neutral station at the edge of Dominion space. Elena insisted on attending personally despite the obvious danger. Chen argued with her for an hour before accepting that she wouldn't change her mind. At least let me come with you, he said. No. If this is a trap, humanity needs you alive to continue the fight. I'm expendable. You're not expendable. You're the face of this entire war. Exactly. Which makes me the perfect bait if this is a trap, and the perfect negotiator if it's real. The station was small, barely more than a trading post. Elena arrived with a single escort ship as agreed. Waiting for her was a Dominion shuttle, also alone. Both sides were taking a risk. She entered the station's conference room. Sitting there were 3 Dominion officers, their scales showing signs of age and battle. The one in the center stood as she entered. Ambassador Volkov. I am General Thrakos. These are General Seshka and Admiral Venhir. We represent a faction within the Dominion military that believes this war must end. Elena sat across from them, studying their faces. They looked tired, worn down by years of fighting. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, Thrakos said bluntly. We are your enemies. We have killed your people. But we are also realists. This war is destroying the Dominion. Your species has proven far more capable than anyone anticipated. You have destroyed a quarter of our fleet. You have liberated 50 worlds. You have inspired rebellions on 100 more. If this continues, the Dominion will collapse. That sounds like a problem for you, not me. It's a problem for everyone. If the Dominion collapses suddenly, it will create a power vacuum across thousands of systems. Chaos, warlords, civil wars. Billions more will die. Is that what you want? Elena leaned back in her chair. What I want is for the Dominion to stop killing innocent people. What I want is justice for New Johannesburg and New Horizon. What I want is a galaxy where species don't have to live in fear of being conquered or destroyed. We want the same thing, Admiral Venhir said. Or at least we want to survive. And we realize now that the only way to do that is to make peace with you. So you're offering surrender? Not exactly. Thrakos pulled up a holographic display. There is a faction within our government that wants to continue the war. They believe humanity can still be defeated. They believe it's only a matter of time and resources. This faction is led by High Commander Kreshitar, brother to Ambassador Kreshtak. Elena recognized the name. Intelligence had briefed her on the Dominion's leadership structure. Kreshtar controlled the majority of what remained of their military. Kreshtar recently authorized the biological weapon used on New Horizon, Thrakos continued. He did so without consulting the full Dominion Council. Many of us saw it as a crime, an atrocity that violated even our own rules of war. But Kreshtar has become powerful. He has silenced his critics. Some of us fear he will not stop until both our species are destroyed. So you want me to help you overthrow him? We want to arrange a joint operation. Your forces and ours, working together to remove Kreshitar from power. Once he is gone, we can negotiate a real peace, one that ends this war without destroying the Dominion completely. Elena was quiet for a long moment. This was exactly what humanity needed, a way to win without committing genocide. But could she trust these Dominion officers? Or was this an elaborate trap? I need proof, she said. Proof that you're serious. Proof that you have the capability to do what you're claiming. General Seshka slid a data chip across the table. Complete fleet positions for all Dominion forces, security codes for their communication networks, and the location of Kreshitar's command center on our homeworld. Enough information to devastate us if we're lying. Elena picked up the chip. If this information was real, it was worth more than 1,000 battleships. I'll verify this. If it's genuine, we'll talk about coordination. But I want to be clear. This doesn't mean forgiveness. Everyone who committed war crimes will face justice, including people on your side. We understand, Thrakos said. Some of us probably deserve whatever punishment you decide, but at least this way, both our species survive. Elena took the data chip back to her ship. Human intelligence analysts spent 3 days verifying it. Everything checked out. The information was real, which meant the Dominion officers were either genuine, or this was the most elaborate trap in history. She made her decision. We proceed, but carefully. The plan was complex. It required perfect timing and coordination between human forces and the Dominion rebels. The target was the Sovereign Citadel, the massive military complex on the Dominion homeworld where Kreshtar maintained his headquarters. James Joe was given command of the ground operation. His new rank of major came with bigger responsibilities and harder choices. He stood in the briefing room of his ship, looking at the holographic map of the Citadel. "This is going to be messy," his second-in-command, now Captain Sarah Chen, said. "Heavy defenses, thousands of troops, and we're supposed to capture Kreshtar alive. That's the mission." James pointed to various sections of the map. "We'll have help from the inside. General Thrakos's people will create diversions here and here. That should draw off most of the garrison. We'll go in fast, hit the command center, and extract Kreshtar before reinforcements arrive. What if the Dominion rebels betray us? Then we die heroically and become cautionary tales about trusting the enemy." Sarah didn't smile. "I'm serious. So am I, but we don't have a choice. This is the best chance we have to end the war without killing billions. We have to try." The operation began at dawn on the Dominion homeworld. Human ships jumped into the system, supported by rebel Dominion vessels. The battle in space was brief and brutal. Loyal Dominion forces were caught off guard by the betrayal of their own. Within 2 hours, human ships had achieved orbital superiority. James and his Marines dropped to the surface in assault pods. They landed 3 kilometers from the Citadel, in a plaza that should have been filled with defensive emplacements. Instead, it was clear. The rebels had kept their promise. They moved quickly through the streets of the Dominion capital. Citizens stared at them, these aliens who had suddenly appeared in their city. Some looked terrified, some looked curious. A few even looked hopeful. "Keep moving," James ordered. "We're not here for them." The Citadel loomed ahead, a massive structure of dark metal and ancient stone. Guard towers lined its walls. Heavy guns tracked their approach. But they didn't fire. Another sign the rebels were in position. Explosions erupted on the far side of the Citadel. Fire and smoke rose into the sky. The diversion was working. James could see troops rushing toward the chaos, leaving other sections vulnerable. "Go, go, go." James led his Marines through a side entrance that had been left open. They moved through corridors designed for creatures much larger than humans. Everything was oversized, built to intimidate. They met resistance at the command center. Loyal Dominion troops who hadn't been diverted. The firefight was intense. James lost 3 Marines in the first 30 seconds, but they pushed forward, using their smaller size and agility to flank the defenders. James broke through a door and found himself in a massive control room. Screens showed the battle raging across the city, and in the center, standing calmly as if he'd been waiting, was High Commander Kreshtar. He was enormous even for a Dominion, nearly 9 feet tall, covered in black scales, with scars that told stories of 1,000 battles. He held no weapon. He didn't need one. His presence alone was intimidating. "Human," he said, his voice deep and rumbling. "Come to kill me." "I'm here to arrest you," James said, his rifle aimed at the commander's chest. "For war crimes, for the murders of billions." "You're going to face justice," Kreshtar laughed. "Justice? You speak of justice while invading our homeworld? While conspiring with traitors? You're no better than us. Maybe not. But we're going to try to be." James gestured with his rifle. "On your knees. Hands behind your head." For a moment, James thought Kreshtar would refuse, thought he'd force them to shoot him. But then, slowly, the massive commander knelt. He placed his hands behind his head. "This doesn't end anything," Kreshtar said. "You think removing me stops the war? There are millions who think like me, who believe the Dominion should rule. You can't arrest all of us, no," James agreed. "But we can start with you." They secured Kreshtar and extracted him to the waiting ships. The operation was a success. Casualties were relatively light, and the symbol of Dominion military power was now a prisoner of the Terran Commonwealth. Within hours, the Dominion Council met in emergency session. With Kreshtar captured and the rebels holding key positions, they had no choice. They voted to request an armistice. The formal peace negotiations took place on the Galactic Council station. Every species in the galaxy sent representatives. The chamber was packed with delegates who wanted to witness this historic moment. Elena sat at the negotiating table, facing a delegation of Dominion officials. General Thrakos was among them, along with several council members. Kreshtar, who had survived the war in disgrace, was not present. The terms took weeks to hammer out. Humanity demanded war crimes, trials for anyone responsible for atrocities, regardless of species. The Dominion would withdraw from all occupied,